Record. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Premier Football Podcast. This week we're asking all the big questions like, are international friendlies necessary during a global pandemic? Why are Ireland so shit? And we look at the idea of identity and national identity in players that maybe have one or two countries that they feel allegiances to. We do have a panel this week. As always, I'm joined by Joe Doherty. Joe, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Rafe. Coffee on the go as always on a Monday morning. Really looking forward to the chat.
Good man yourself. Shovy, you've got over your technical difficulties. We almost had to sack you as producer there for a minute when you couldn't figure out how to turn on your camera.
Oh, well, now his audio's not working. Look at that. So we can't hear you. Yeah. I'd say click your mic.
And as you can see,
we're also Waterford today.
we're also joined by Shovy, you are back. Go on.
Dude, this is today is not the day for me, man. It just doesn't work properly. What is this? Technology's never been my arch enemy, but today is.
And we've got local funny man, friend of the show, Killian Sundermann. How are you getting on?
I'm good. Up this morning, had a nice run and a banana smoothie, feeling good.
Now, you're apparently quite funny these days. How come you never told us that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hid it from my friends all these years. But I figured out recently that if you put videos online, people kind of tend to like them. So I've been doing that recently.
Geez, we should try that sometime.
So what kind of videos do you want to make, Rafe?
I was thinking we might do a show where we sit down and talk about football, you know, all the current themes that are relevant for the week and float it out there. I've had this idea for a while now.
I don't think anyone's done that before.
No, it's a new concept.
A very original idea.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I have a quick question before we get going.
Yeah.
Are we on a split screen, or whoever's talking, they're going to be on the screen?
We're on speaker view at the moment, but I might flick between the old gallery view for the folks at home.
Okay, yeah, sure. Just let us know, when
you're the vision mixer.
That's it. Right. Look, I suppose we'll talk a little bit about the football, and obviously there's been a host of international games played over the last week. The most, I suppose, eye-catching for people watching this show will be Ireland and England midweek, a game that England obviously battered Ireland in, and Ireland looked good for about 5 or 10 minutes, and that's kind of what that's what we have to settle for. They've gone 6 games now without scoring a goal under new manager Stephen Kenny. They've been dumped out of the European playoffs, and they were beaten again by Wales for what seems like the 10th time in the last year. Yesterday, did anyone watch that game? Joe, you were keeping us up to date with that one.
I didn't watch it. I have to admit, I watched the England Ireland game on Friday night. Was it Friday night or Thursday?
Who are you supporting, Joe?
England, obviously. International football. But I mean, this is really bad for Ireland. It's actually quite worrying because we see it a lot in the Premier League. You might have a team who can knock the ball around in an all right fashion, but they can't score goals and they're conceding at the same time. And this is very unlike Ireland. Ireland hadn't lost to England since 1985. Even the last 2 games, I think in 2013 and 2015, had been draws. And as an England fan internationally, I wasn't confident in those games because I knew how tough to break down Ireland were and how up for it the manager would have the players. But that's just not the case now. And I mean, going and losing to Wales is uncharacteristic of what I associate with an Irish team as well. Ireland should not be losing to Wales.
I mean, just I think that like the kind of elephant in the room in regards to like Stephen Kenny's Ireland at the moment is definitely the lack of fans. I mean, Ireland's like a very emotional team that almost needs its fans there. It's like a very strong 12th player on the pitch, and I do agree like that they are playing, like, I mean, they look nice for a while. They seem to be able to play the game well for like, I don't know, maybe 20-25 minutes, and then they kind of get steamrolled and they let goals in. But I do think that the lack of a stadium full of supporting fans seems to be a huge thing for this squad. I don't know why, but it just seems to affect them more than other teams.
Killian, do you reckon that the lack of decent players perhaps could contribute to it as well?
Yeah.
Boys, I don't know how to, the easiest way to put this, we are still a championship team. Like you compare our players to say, even Wales, how many Premier League players they have, and how many Championship players we had, like who Randolph and Joe Doherty are the only two Prem players.
I'm Joe Doherty. You mean Matt Doherty?
Sorry.
I won't
Unfortunately, that ship has sailed,
thank you very much.
Sorry, guys. I thought he might have been related to
I heard the point made during the week that Stephen Kenny has been really unlucky with injuries and COVID tests and false positives and the like since he took over as Ireland manager. And he has been without a kind of recognised senior goal scorer. And there's a lot of kind of hopes and promise about the likes of Aaron Connolly and Michael Obafemi and Adam Ida and players like this. But we've not really, and I know that this is the cliche in Irish football, we've never replaced Robbie Keane. And you know what, I was thinking earlier, people our age, we were sold a lie when we were younger, watching Ireland compete in the World Cup in 2002, even without Roy Keane, getting out of the group stages, only getting knocked out on penalties to Spain. And, this is what we were sold when we were kids. But after that, I think Brian Kerr took over after Mick McCarthy, and it was all just, it's been a constant disappointment after disappointment after disappointment for us.
But I think that was like Ireland's golden generation, if you will. I mean, Jack Charlton took Ireland to the Euros in 1988, the World Cup in 1990, and the World Cup in 1994 on the back of a really well-drilled side. And what he did very well is that he had a great core, but he managed to convince some very decent English-born players to play for Ireland. I don't know if because he was English as well himself. But he managed to do that, and you had, the Clucks have a really good team playing a very specific type of football, nothing glamorous, but very effective. Beating England in the World Cup in 1990, beating in the Euros in 1988, beating Italy in was it the World Cup in '94?
Drawing with England again.
They beat Italy in '94, yeah.
Yeah, and drawing with England again. Some really good results, and then.
2002 World Cup, boys.
Robbie World Cup.
Why are you forgetting? Yeah, 2002 World Cup. They got to quarters?
Second round. 16. That's what I was going to come to. Then there was that golden generation, and I think Ireland were very unlucky in that. But I think that we have to understand that was a golden generation, and that's not something that's going to happen.
I think two things I contend probably with, like what Rafe said there. Like I agree that like post 2002 hasn't been the prettiest. Period of football, probably like the worst period of Irish international football. But there have been some good moments. Like there has been, like the win against Italy in the Euros. I mean, that was quite good. And there was that World Cup run where we almost got into the World Cup and only were kicked out because of, handball by Thierry Henry. But then also the idea that it was a uniquely golden generation in 2002. I do think that was a very good squad of players. But historically, if you look through the annals of Irish history, they have always been able to produce at least 2 to 3 top class players who would be at the top, 4 clubs in the Premier League and be, integral parts of that. They have always been able to do that. And for some reason in 2004, that just stopped. And we've never been able to produce another player at the same caliber as, Damien Duff or Robbie Keane.
Well, and that's John O'Shea. Dude, why are you forgetting John O'Shea, man?
Like you look through you have like, you have like Brady, Shea Given, John Giles, all these Irish-born, right, Frank Stapleton, people who were like, really very, very good players. And like they were going home to an Irish team that like was full of people who were all playing in the Premier Division in England. But I don't know why, but post 2002, we just haven't been able to do it. I
suppose when you look at the money in the modern game and how much money other nations are investing in the development and how well or the lack of progress, I suppose, in the development of the Irish League at home, Ireland are still very much suffering from a John Delaney hangover and a mismanagement of funds for a very, very long time. I mean, even the fact that Stephen Kenny is in charge at the moment now, having taken over mid-campaign from a Mick McCarthy who was actually doing really well and looked like we were on course to qualify for the Euros because of this weird agreement that they had. Suddenly Stephen Kenny found himself being thrust in for these massive playoff games without having any sort of relationship with the squad and changing the players around. And I just feel like it's going to be another few years before we really are away from this awful shadow hanging over Irish football.
Lads,
Yeah.
also
That's a good.
Also,
good.
just to say something else, you know, Killian was talking about how Ireland stopped producing all these world-class players. I mean, they still do, but they just don't play for Ireland. They play for England now. Like Jack
they're not produced by.
That's
well,
we should.
Grealish is an Aston
even
Villa.
in cricket, their
Yeah.
T20 World Cup captain is Irish.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They just love taking our players, man. Doesn't matter what sport.
I wouldn't
backbone
say
of the English national side is
I'd
green, white, and orange. I'm telling you.
I wouldn't say that. I think that there's an allure of playing for England, which there isn't of playing for Ireland, because England have won a World Cup, because England tend to fare much better, because there's so much money in the English game and there's so many players. So for Jack Grealish, is he going to play in a World Cup semi-final for Ireland? Probably not. Is he going to play in a World Cup semi-final for England? There's a decent chance if they sack Gareth Southgate and hire a proper manager.
Well, lads, look, it's great to have all of you on the show today, because this is something that I did want to talk about, this idea of nationality in football. Obviously, Grealish and Rice came through the underage system in Ireland. They were both born, though, in the UK and grew up in England. Obviously, Killian, you were born in the UK to a German parent and an Irish parent. Joe, you were born in the north of Ireland to a British parent and an Irish parent. And Shovy, you were born in Bangladesh and of course moved over to Waterford, which is its own country. When you were
John
about 7 or
O'Shea,
whatever, like.
John O'Shea, lad.
So
John O'Shea was in my... Dude, John O'Shea was in my school, man. You know what I mean? We had the same geography teacher.
But I mean, you guys all obviously have a different perspective to someone like myself, who was born to Irish parents and grew up in Ireland and feels wholeheartedly Irish. I'm sure you can sympathise with this idea of feeling attached to two nations. Maybe, Killian, I might bring you in on this, because you've got the widest kind of range.
Well, Rafe, I do know that there is a small strain of Scottish ancestry in you, so you'll have a lot of fun celebrating Scotland's win in the Euros.
This is true.
So it's not all gone. But yeah, I don't know. As long as I can remember, I've always just been able to support Ireland. And I mean, I remember Ireland playing Germany in 2002 in the World Cup, and that being like a big moment for me. And all the kids in the school going like, "Who are you going to support? Who are you going to support?" And I obviously always supported Ireland, but I would watch the German games as well. I think that like the best moments for me have always been in international football when, like, you know, Germany winning the World Cup. And Joe remember this, that when Germany won the World Cup, it was probably, you know, I haven't had a kid like Joe, so I don't know what the joy of that is. But having the team that you support win the World Cup is a joy that, you know, I can't express. And that was with Germany. But then like Ireland, you know, beating Italy when Robbie Brady's that goal from that, you know, from that amazing cross, like that was also like a pure joy that I can't express. So I've always been able to I don't know, just support both teams and not worry about it. It's never been a conflict of interest or anything like that. I equally support them both. Which is the way I think identity should work. You shouldn't have to choose one or the other. You should be able to just embrace both equally. And that's kind of how I do it with the football. But always Ireland a little bit more.
Joe? Yeah, I'd be a little bit different to Killian, I think, because my earliest memory of watching football is watching the 98 World Cup. In my granddad's house in Devon, and obviously everyone was supporting England, so I was supporting England, and I got an England kit, and I think once after that, then I started, you know, England were in Euro 2000, England were in the World Cup in 2002, albeit with Ireland, and like when Ireland are playing, I would root for them, but I don't feel anything more like. I don't feel the same connection to the Irish football team as I do to the English football team. That's not to say that I feel more British or English than I do Irish. I don't think that I do. I think that in terms of being a fan, it's because it's what I've known all my life to support the English football team. And I wasn't introduced to the Irish football team until I was 9. You know, so I don't feel the same level of enthusiasm towards them as I do towards England. which is strange because obviously I lived in Ireland all my life, and I suppose I have an Irish accent, although some people might say I have a West
borderline American accent.
Borderline what?
Borderline American, I said, for the South Dublin twinge.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And Shovy, obviously, it's different again for yourself now. Obviously, football isn't as big in Bangladesh as it is in the UK or in Germany. You're not watching Bangladesh going on lifting World Cups and stuff like that. But if you were to get the call from Stephen Kenny now, would you have to turn him down and say, no, I'm still waiting to represent the roots, or how do you see it?
Definitely not. I mean, I know we've had this conversation when we play cricket. I've never wanted to represent Bangladesh at any national level. It was always Ireland for me. There's a lot of personal reasons. I'm sure you guys know it, but like, to be honest, I started watching football because of Fabian Barthez, man. It was 1998. And, you know, everyone said Zinedine Zidane and Petit, that they were the better players that World Cup, but Fabian Barthez was the man for me. And he's the reason why I started supporting United. And then obviously when we moved over here, it was always Man United because John O'Shea was in my school. Roy Keane was in my favorite team. And, you know, and 2002, I was a very avid Irish supporter because I knew we were about to move here. And, you know, because my dad came here first in 2000. And by then we knew we were going to be coming over here. So I just had this weird, strange connection to Ireland even before I moved here. And then I don't know, man. I mean, I had John O'Shea. It was just, the first day I went into school, I saw my geography teachers on top of the whiteboard that there's a picture with him and John O'Shea, and like everyone in my class were like, "Oh yeah, he went to this school, you know, he lives on the other side of the river and all this." And you know, all this I think the fact that I had local connections and they were just the fact that like I went to school with the same as an international footballer and someone plays for Man United, that never happened in my life, and it just really drawn me towards Irish football. Even though, like, you know, Trapattoni football, we played terrible, I still supported it.
I had a mild shudder there when you said the word Trapattoni. I'd almost forgotten that era actually happened. I'd repressed it completely.
He nearly got us to World Cup, man. If Thierry Henry,
I know, but like, fucking hell.
He got us to the Euros, didn't he? In 2012.
In 2012, yeah. And Ireland lost every single game.
That was
the worst ever performance of a team in the Euros. I'll have to know.
And that's very Ireland aren't like that. Like, Ireland aren't great, but Ireland aren't whipping boys. Yeah. It's not in the Irish character, really. No. I don't think to bend over.
They're a slip-up team. They're a slip-up team. Even like when Germany are playing Ireland, like you would, they always manage to get a result, and especially like that England result was so surprising on the weekend because England have never been able to beat us. I mean, I know they have maybe, you know, way back when, but in the last, like whenever Ireland meet England, it's always a hotly contested game. We seem to just, I mean, the thing with Ireland is we seem to do well against the great teams, and then like just like the average teams and the bad teams are the ones that we tend to not be able to put away.
The Manchester United of international football.
Yeah, but like, do you remember Ireland having to beat Georgia? Do you remember Ireland having to beat Georgia and failing twice?
Yeah,
like that's it in a nutshell.
Slovenia though in the playoffs though, even this time around. Right, look, Shovy, you mentioned cricket there.
A really good team.
Sorry, you mentioned cricket there and the international rules, and interesting enough, the way cricket is structured, you're almost allowed to change allegiances. Having represented one country at an international level, you're allowed to actually move and go on and represent another. I know it's to do with how the countries are ranked and tiered and stuff, but that option doesn't exist in Ireland in football. Obviously, Declan Rice played 3 international senior friendlies for Ireland before switching to England. Do we think that, would anyone be in favour of allowing people with dual citizenship or dual nationality to try to represent both countries? Like, you guys would know better than I do what it feels like to have that affinity to multiple places in the world, or would that just promote players moving between which country is doing better, do you feel? I'll leave it open for everyone to.
I think that it actually works well the way they do it. That if you represent one country in a friendly, that you have the ability to then change to represent another country that you're eligible for. Like if it would almost turn into transfers, and there'd be, you know, financial incentives from one footballing association trying to pinch a player from another, even after they played in a World Cup. You know, it would turn into
like Hakim Ziyech.
So,
how much would Holland like to take him back right now?
Massively. I mean, this is. There are so many players. I don't know. Aubameyang, he could represent Italy, he could represent France, but he doesn't. He represents Gabon. You know, if there was the opportunity for the French or Italian FAs to try to turn his head with money, which they could obviously do, if you know, I think it would ruin it. I actually think that the way they have it set up, it gives people the chance to make a decision for themselves by just limiting it to friendlies.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with Joe. Except maybe I kind of think like once you've kidded up and played at the international side, maybe, you know, like our boy Declan did. I think maybe that is your decision. You know, you're also forgetting Michael Keane. Didn't he also represent Ireland at a youth level?
He did.
Like many of the English. I think that like it is unfortunate, but there is a route for Irish English people who have that dual background to find a way into the English squad by representing Ireland at youth level and showing that they're able to do it. So it seems to be kind of like a way for young Irish people living in, or people who have an Irish identity in the UK to get into the English squad. So, you know, if they're using us for that, whatever, I guess that's on them really. But I think that if you had something like what it's like in rugby as well, where if you live and work in the place for 3 years, you can play for the national side. I think you would end up having like financial incentives and people moving back, because football is just too big a money game in comparison to other ones. And like even international football is riddled with money as well, even though most of the players give it to charity and stuff. But like it's still it could become. And the thing about international football that is so amazing is because it seems to be purely emotional and purely like real football, where you have clubs like Iceland who don't have much, but they're somehow able to make it to the semis of the Euros. And it's like this wonderful thing, like what I'd say English people think the FA Cup was, but that isn't really anymore. But like this wonderful thing where anything can happen, and usually the same people win, but it is always like on the edge of your seats, and it's very emotional, and I just prefer it like that. So I think it has to stay the way it is.
Now, it does work both ways. England have lost one. They've missed out on a real wonder boy who switched allegiances. 27-year-old Ravel Morrison, Shovy, you might remember from the United Academy, made his debut for Jamaica over the weekend. He came off the bench in a 3-0 loss to Saudi Arabia. Is he the one that got away, Shovy, do you think?
No. Why are we talking about him? Oh man, I read an article the other day. There's somebody, I think it was the Mirror Sport, where they wrote they think Mason Greenwood is going to be the next Ravel Morrison. But listen, Ravel Morrison, he had a really tough time with his personal life, which obviously blowed over to football, and obviously he couldn't really represent England anymore. And man, so that's another thing. Once you have dual nationality, I think that's another thing that players get to redeem themselves at national level, you know. And I think representing a country is always the pride you feel. I mean, I can't imagine being a sports person and having the same level of integrity doing or like representing myself in any other level than a national level.
Shovy, I can't imagine you having integrity at any level.
I'm a bit of a pirate, you know, but
it's a bit below the belt, right?
We were actually talking about this sledging yesterday at the cricket podcast, man. You know?
Yeah. Come here. What do you guys think about? I could give the example of Bukayo Saka, who I think was born in Nigeria but moved to England when he was very young, or else was born in England but his parents are Nigerians from Nigeria. Like England have now called him up and capped him in the Nations League, which means that he's going to be an England player. But what if he's his form at club level for Arsenal dips and he doesn't cut it at Arsenal? I hope he does. He does. But what if that could happen? Then
he gets
can't play for Nigeria
football
because he's already played for England.
I think there's like 3 years you can't play any international football before you can represent it. There's a law, like. So I think you'll have to wait it out a few years till he's eligible to represent another national country again.
No,
I think if you played in a tournament, then that's it. Then you're done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're
he's
dust.
fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, then man, he's done.
This is an issue. You have bigger, or not. You have every international squad is kind of trying to tap up their prospects to get them capped in a tournament so that they're protected.
And look, we were asking the same questions about Jack Grealish a few weeks ago, a few months ago, until he was finally capped once or twice, and then even at that stage, we were wondering if he was going to be, a long-term fixture in the England team. After his performance yesterday, he does look like he's going to be in that team for a very, very, very long time.
I'd almost say he's their best player.
He looked like it yesterday.
No, man.
I'm talking about a club level as well. I think he's their most gifted player. I think he adds the most.
I think yesterday it was interesting to see everyone on the pitch who wanted to give him the ball. Everyone in an England shirt wanted to give it to him and let him run the show because he was really, really playing with confidence. It'll be interesting to see if he does take a dip at club form at some stage and that confidence does go if he maintains the same level of output. But I mean, when he's at it, he really is at it, isn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant. And it is nice to see, I suppose, in a way that there is an English side that has so much Irish representation in it, I mean, like from Kane to
no, it's not.
Michael Keane, Declan Rice.
I hope they all trip over their shoelaces.
Like, I don't know. I mean, like in the same way that, like, I mean, I think a lot of African nations found pride when that French side won the World Cup. Like, it is like a good story for immigrants moving to other countries and like to. I don't know. It's nice to see in a certain way. Obviously, like it's difficult because Ireland and England have their own historical differences. But I do like to see it. Them getting representation because it does. I mean, this idea that we're crap at football. Like we're obviously not crap at football. If we're flooding one of the world's top teams with players. So in a way, it's kind of nice.
That's very fair, and it's an interesting point for sure. The last thing I suppose I wanted to talk about today was the necessity of having an international break at this stage of the season. The players have gone from Project Restart last year, and they played an outrageous number of games towards the end of that season. They then had what was maybe a 2 or 3 week break over the summer before coming back into the full swing of professional football in September. They've been playing 2 games a week. Now, I'm talking about the elite level players in England, the ones playing Champions League midweek. They've been playing weekend, midweek, weekend, non-stop until this break. And now they've broken all of the bubbles. They've sent the players out on Premier League, on international duty. We've seen a host of injuries in relation to top players in the Premier League, the likes of Ben Chilwell, Jordan Henderson, Joe Gomez, Andy Robertson for Liverpool as well. Missed Scotland's game yesterday. Nathan Ake was injured last week as well. Mo Salah's obviously returned another positive COVID test. And a lot of the games played last week were friendly games. I know that they wanted to get the Nations League games played because they do have bearing on rankings and stuff like this, but it just seems really unnecessary right now, like for any game other than maybe the Northern Ireland game and the Scotland game in the playoffs to have gone ahead. Yeah, maybe the players would have been better off with a week break rather than a week with 3 international games shoved in there. I don't know who wants to take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that. I think it's ludicrous. I mean, let's not forget that they're back. They're going to be back playing Premier League football this weekend, and then there are Champions League, Europa League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup fixtures. It's just a non-stop, never-ending. We're coming into the Christmas period as well, where they're going to be playing 3 or 4 games in a week. It's absolutely mad. They have the professional bodies have no regard whatsoever for the care of these players. The stress that it takes on someone's body to be playing at that level, at that intensity, week in, like multiple times a week. This is basically going to be for the second half of 2020, like 2 games a week, every single week, on average. It's just too much. It's not okay to expect the players to go through this. Add into the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Then when players are returning positive tests, they're not getting seriously ill, but it puts a stress on the rest of the squad, because in Liverpool's case, with Mo Salah returning positive test, they can't pick him, so their squad is thinner, and their squad is already thin at the moment. So I just think it's really unfair for the people in positions of power to be insisting that these mundane international fixtures have to go ahead.
Yeah, that's the mundane's the word as well. I mean, it's obviously not for the fans, because international football can sometimes be a drag, but international football in empty stadiums is something else. I mean, like
international friendlies.
It's like, I don't know what. Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I wish they hadn't done this break, because Ireland would have obviously lost 2 less games. But, but
so
no,
far,
I
they
think
could
it's
lose the third midweek as well.
But no, I think it's ludicrous as well. It's too many games, and it's not even that entertaining. So what's the fucking point?
but as you know, as Killian said, having international games without a crowd, it really doesn't feel the same. I mean, you may as well, it's terrible, you know.
Yeah.
Like international football relies so much on the fans being there, because and it's a very emotional moment when you see your country play, because we don't go to wars anymore, so that's like the closest thing we come to.
Yeah.
You know?
You never know, Shovy, don't write it off.
So like it is kind of bad. I mean, you need the crowd, and especially when you have teams like Ireland who basically play for the crowd. Not having the crowd, it kind of defeats the purpose. And also obviously the executives aren't the people who are on the pitch, who are training, who are literally breaking their bones, so they don't really care. They care about the money at the end of the year, so that's what they're focusing on anyway.
Yeah. But would there even that much money to be made from this? Sorry, like
for some of the smaller countries, I think that they rely on TV rights deals and stuff like this to help some of the money come in. It's something that I heard discussed during the week, and it's something that UEFA or FIFA could easily absorb the cost for a lot of these smaller teams. Like England don't need the TV money. They have a lot of resources. They have it there, whereas a smaller European country might need that money to help, you know, fund grassroots football and stuff like that. But it's definitely a cost that could be absorbed. And when you factor in that there's an international tournament next summer as well. The players won't get any time off then, and then there's the African Cup of Nations the following January as well. Yeah. Like this is going to be non-stop for a very, very long time. And when you see the types of injuries that the players are getting, I think Joe Gomez was ruled out for up to 6 months with a knee injury that's just essentially wear and tear. That's what they called it. Jordan Henderson pulled out at halftime yesterday with stiffness. Andy Robertson was an injury doubt. He didn't play because he wasn't feeling quite right. And we're only the 11th of November. Like Joe said, we're coming into the busiest time of year for football, and there's already key players in big teams pulling out with little niggles just from playing too much football.
Yeah. And there's more football packed into this Premier League season because we started late. I mean, the repercussions of this are going to be the players involved in international and club football and continental football, playing European competitions as well as Premier League, are going to have shortened careers because they've just condensed so much football into this that their bodies are not going to be able to progress past, the age of 32, 33. It's just, as Rafe said, the wear and tear on the body the stress is just going to be too much.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative? Do you allow 5 subs like what they did in Germany, what they did in France?
100%. And you stop playing international. I mean, they can't now. They've decided to do it. They're not going to back out now. They've had 2 international breaks in the space of 6 weeks.
I suppose the argument about the 5 subs is that it helps the bigger teams, but at the same time, the bigger teams are the ones that have players off on international duty. That are the ones suffering at the same time. Like, I mean, Burnley don't have 15 of their squad out playing 3 international games this week. They just don't. So they might not need to make the same number of changes.
With Jeff Hendrick.
Hendrick's in Newcastle.
Hendrick plays for Newcastle. Yeah.
When did he move there?
Over the
summer, free transfer.
Is he doing it? He's free transfer.
Yeah, his contract expired.
I was so excited when he went there, and he was like, this big buy, and now it just didn't really work out.
Luckily for Hendrick, he's going to have midweek off as well because he picked up a red card in the last minute of the Wales game for a shocking challenge. So he secured himself a bit of extra rest. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that was tactical.
That's the second time Ireland has conceded a red card against Wales.
In the last minute, in 2 games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, lads, we've got about 2 minutes left. Killian and Shovy, I know you guys both have other projects maybe that you might like to give a little plug to. Shovy, this week you've started up a new podcast, have you?
Yeah. So started off as a cricket podcast. It's a sister podcast to this podcast. We call it the Sticky Wicket Podcast. We'll stick a link on it. The first video is ready to go. I'm obviously going to upload it after we finish recording it. It's uploaded. I'm just going to premiere it basically. But social media, yeah, please follow us on Sticky Wicket Podcast. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I don't know if this Facebook page is set up. Also YouTube. We're mainly YouTube-based podcast. And I also sell masks, size mask. If you need a mask, check us out.
And now
Everyone needs a mask.
Shovy, you're not worried about burnout, representing both the cricket podcast and the football podcast at the same time. It's not too many games for you, is it?
No. That's okay, man. I have a lot of free time. It's a pandemic, I've got to keep myself busy.
Right,
until I go insane.
Get Killian in there very quickly. Killian,
luckily the regulations on podcast allegiances are very lax, so you can go on as many podcasts as you want. I have a podcast called MK Ultra Film, which is a film review podcast with my friend Mark Byrne in Berlin. We send each other WhatsApp voice messages and then review them. The podcast has been described as really, really good by both of our mums, so I really recommend giving it a listen. You can find it on any of the social medias, but probably Instagram's the best one.
And you make funny videos on Instagram as well, don't you?
Oh yeah. Of course, you can follow my page, Killer Sunday. I make kind of comedy videos, so you can check them out there on Twitter and Instagram and and TikTok.
We'll put a link to both of your other projects in the description.
For sure. And look, guys, thanks for coming on today. It's been great having a bigger panel than normal, and having a bit more of a lighthearted approach to the football. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Shovy and Killian and Joe as always.
It's been real, man. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's been real.
Thanks, lads. Right. Link is about to expire. I expect the whole thing to just
be sure to subscribe disappear. And thank you.
Cut out at any second.
Cheers. Bye.